Before it was a ruin, Greenwood was a neighborhood alive with ambition. Along its streets in Tulsa, Oklahoma, black residents built groceries, hotels, restaurants, churches, newspapers, professional offices, and entertainment venues. John Wesley and Lula Mae Williams owned the Dreamland Theater. J.B. Stratford operated a major hotel. By 1921, Greenwood had roughly 200 black-owned businesses. It was often called Black Wall Street. But Greenwood was not uniformly wealthy, and it was not a literal financial district. Working families lived beside successful professionals and entrepreneurs. Its growth occurred inside Jim Crow segregation, which concentrated black spending within the neighborhood while denying residents equal city services. Greenwood represented community independence under conditions designed to restrict it. Then, over roughly 18 hours, a white assault devastated it. The immediate crisis began on May 30th, 1921. Dick Rowland, a 19-year-old black shoe shiner, entered an elevator operated by Sarah Page, a young white woman. A white clerk, not Page, reported an alleged assault. What happened inside the elevator remains unknown. Page did not pursue charges, and the case against Rowland was eventually dismissed. Police arrested Rowland the next morning. That afternoon, the Tulsa Tribune published an inflammatory story portraying the unsupported allegation as an attempted assault. Rumors of a lynching spread. Black Tulsans had reason to take that threat seriously. The year before, a white prisoner named Roy Belton had been taken from Tulsa authorities and lynched while the police chief ordered officers not to intervene. Across the United States, racial terror had intensified after World War I. Black veterans had returned from military service, increasingly unwilling to accept mob violence without resistance. On May 31st, a growing white crowd gathered outside the county courthouse and demanded Rowland. Sheriff Willard McCullough refused to surrender him. Shortly after 9 that night, about 25 armed black men, many of them veterans, arrived to offer protection. They left after being assured that Rowland was secure. Later, as the white crowd grew toward an estimated 2,000 almost, a second group of about 75 black men approached. The most common account says a white man tried to take a gun from a black veteran, and the weapon discharged. Exactly who fired first and how cannot be established. But gunfire spread through the streets. The violence soon moved far beyond the courthouse confrontation. Police made as many as 500 white men special deputies in about half an hour, granting official authority to men drawn from the crowd around a threatened lynching. White men also seized weapons and ammunition from stores. Black defenders retreated toward Greenwood as firefights continued near the railroad tracks. Black residents did fire weapons, and white people were killed and wounded. But what followed was not a battle between equal forces. During the night, police-linked forces and white residents organized into groups. Shortly after 5 in the morning on June 1st, attacks entered Greenwood from several directions. The assault was coordinated and systematic. Armed white men moved house to house, looting property and setting buildings on fire. Homes, churches, restaurants, doctors' offices, grocery stores, hotels, and a black public library burned. People fleeing, surrendering, praying, or unable to walk were among those killed. Airplanes circled overhead. Witnesses reported gunfire and incendiary material coming from them, and later investigations found evidence consistent with some of those accounts. But the surviving record does not firmly establish how often shots were fired from planes, or whether incendiaries were dropped. That uncertainty should not obscure what is documented on the ground. Local police and Tulsa-based National Guard personnel helped round up black residents. Some local guardsmen had earlier protected the armory and tried to disarm attackers, so their conduct was not uniform. Outside state troops arrived later, and martial law was declared around 11:30 in the morning, after most of the destruction had already occurred. By then, approximately 35 blocks were devastated. More than 1,000 homes had burned, roughly 190 businesses were lost, and about 10,000 people were homeless. More than 700 people were wounded. The death toll remains uncertain. Oklahoma's official count recorded 36 deaths. Credible estimates reach as high as 300. Incomplete records, unmarked burials, irregular handling of bodies, and residents who permanently fled make an exact number impossible to recover. Survivors were not simply allowed to return home. Officers and special deputies detained black residents regardless of suspected wrongdoing. At their fullest, detention sites held an estimated 4,000 to 6,000 people under armed guard. Release often required identification and a white sponsor. Some black men were compelled to clear debris and bury bodies. City leaders promised help but rejected outside aid and supplied little meaningful rebuilding money. The American Red Cross provided food, medicine, clothing, medical care, and tents. Some displaced residents lived in makeshift shelter for more than a year. Then Tulsa tried to make rebuilding harder. On June 7th, the city imposed expensive fireproof construction requirements across much of Greenwood, a measure intended to make black residential rebuilding impractical and shift the land toward industrial use. Black attorneys B.C. Franklin, I.I.H. Spears, and T.O. Chappelle fought the ordinance, and courts ultimately blocked it. But other doors remained closed. Insurance companies rejected claims under so-called riot clauses. Lawsuits against the city, officials, insurers, and others failed. A state grand jury blamed armed black men while largely excusing white participants. No white attacker was imprisoned for the massacre. Black Tulsans rebuilt anyway. More than 80 black-owned businesses reopened within a year. And by 1942, Greenwood counted 242 black-owned and operated businesses. That resilience was extraordinary. It was not compensation. Families had lost relatives, homes, documents, possessions, income, and inherited wealth. Later, urban renewal and highway construction damaged the rebuilt district again. Decades passed before official investigations confronted the massacre in depth. A state commission's 2001 report recommended direct payments to survivors and descendants, scholarships, economic development, and a memorial. Those recommendations were not binding awards. Survivors continued seeking relief, but in 2024, the Oklahoma Supreme Court affirmed dismissal of their latest case because the remedies sought were unavailable under the legal claims they brought. That ruling did not dispute that the massacre happened or that government actors participated. Today, investigators are still examining burials using archaeology, DNA, and genealogy. Tulsa has announced new repair initiatives, records work, and continued graves research. These are ongoing measures, not proof that compensation has been completed. The Tulsa Race Massacre was not only the burning of a prosperous black neighborhood, it was the destruction of lives and institutions enabled by public authority, followed by detention, obstruction, silence, and failed accountability. Greenwood's rebuilding shows what its residents achieved. The unfinished search for graves and justice shows what the country still owes the truth. If this history matters to you, please like this video and subscribe for more overlooked stories from American and world history.